got some bad news. It's official. This isn't a debate anymore. The divorce is happening. Hashtag LGB without the T.
Some people believe that our community should separate LGB from TQ, essentially dividing us along sexual orientation and gender identity. Simply put, we cannot do this.
Go figure. You give them the right to marry and all of a sudden they're talking about divorce. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are breaking down the divorce that is currently happening between the LGB and the TQ. And if you don't know that was happening, if you don't know what's going on, if you're not terminally online, although who are we? Who are you fooling? You're definitely terminally online if you're watching this. There is a growing movement of people within the, hold on, let me check the current acronym because it's not even actually LGBT anymore. It is now the LGBTQIA2S plus community, also known as the Wi-Fi password community, as I like to call it. So there's a growing group of people who fall into the L, the G, and the B who want to separate from the T and the Q. And you guys know I stopped at T. Like I never even got to the Q, never understood that one. Call me a traditionalist, call me old school. I'm just a trad wife like that. As a card carrying member of the T, I'm gonna give you my thoughts on if the two should be separated and viewed as something different. And if I view this LGB movement as something hateful, as you know, the internet is trying to say that it is.
You can be ignorant and you can be ungrateful. But you ain't gonna speak for me or anybody else in this community as far as I'm concerned.
And we're gonna react to videos from people on both sides of the issue to see where we land. So the basis of why gay, lesbian, bisexual people want to separate from the TQ is that they view it as inherently and intrinsically something different. So first of all, LGB, that's a sexual orientation, or those are sexual orientations rather. The T, you know, that's a gender identity. And I know that people have some issues differentiating between the two. Some people have an issue with that. They can't really understand it. But the long and short of that is LGB, sexual orientation, that's who you want to go to sleep with. The T, gender identity, that's who you want to go to sleep as. Very different. The other argument is that the general behavior from the TQ is a bad look for the LGB, and that it's eroding the social acceptance, progress, and rights of gay, lesbian, and bisexual people. And they cite things like LGBT acceptance among young people going down for the first time in like a generation, which is true. I mean, GLAAD released that study. You know, if GLAAD is releasing a study that is bad for gay people, it's probably true. Even more shocking, I guess it's shocking, is that support for gay marriage is plummeting in the United States. And there was a time not that long ago, I would say maybe even like 2 or 3 years ago, where you couldn't even find two people to sit in a room and debate that issue. It was a dead issue. It was deaded. Like no one really cared. Like at most they didn't like it, but they were like, whatever, they can have, their thing. Now, people are rethinking that. And it is in part due to, the activism coming out of the T's and the Q's. So I have almost complete indifference to if this divorce happens. I don't think it will. I don't think you're going to train people to, cite a new acronym, although maybe I'm wrong. It's changed so many times, although people only seem to want to add to it, not take away from it. I've never understood why everything was grouped in like that. I think that the complete rejection of individualism in modern society is a huge part of the downfall of modern society. I think that way too many people use we as a pronoun. That's a big red flag, by the way, my biggest red flag. If you ever catch anyone using we as a pronoun, we got an issue. If you're talking for and as and from within a group rather than for your own being, you're not really my kind of person, right? Like whenever I'm talking, I'm not talking for even other transsexuals who agree with me. I'm talking for me, for Blaire White, for this individual right here, because I'm only in this body. I have this one life and this one spirit, and my brain is my own. Way too many people only know how to think if it's groupthink, and that's an issue for me. So, I've never felt an inherent camaraderie with gay people or lesbians or bisexual people at all. I've barely felt camaraderie with other transsexuals. That was one of my first realizations when I transitioned and I sought community. When I realized I was trans, I started going to trans support groups and I was like, okay, let me find a community within the T. Didn't find it. In fact, was very repelled by it, was very turned off by it. It was very scary. It was like, oh, this is a cult. Okay, never mind. Gonna just go back to being just Blaire, which was a good thing. But a lot of people get caught up in that cult. So that's a bad thing. And, the resentment that some gays and lesbians feel towards trans ideology, we'll say, is pretty easily understood when you look at really any detransition story, because if you look at the primary victims of people who are put through the, medical pipeline of transition and then come to regret it and come to realize it was a mistake, they're always gays and lesbians for the most part. I mean, obviously not all the time, but most of the time. It's a feminine gay man who was convinced by that community and brainwashed that means that he must be a girl and he must castrate himself. You look at, tomboys, we have hashtag save tomboys I've seen like on Twitter trending, because a lot of tomboys are being gaslit and brainwashed into believing that they must be boys because they have, masculine tendencies, or they are tomboys. And that's a pretty clear explanation for me as to why that resentment is occurring, or at least one of the reasons. And, I think I maybe went to like one gay pride parade when I was maybe like 18 or 19 years old, just because I was day drunk with my friends and we went. And, even at that time, I was kind of realizing that I was a transsexual and that I wanted to transition, and, maybe thought that would be a place where it would make sense for me to go. And it really wasn't. I didn't relate to gay culture at all. I don't relate to like the drag race watch parties and the gay stuff. Like, I respect it. And I'm not saying this in a negative way. I do respect, the things that make gay culture fun for certain people, but it's not something I've ever truly related to. It seemed like for the longest time that the LGBT movement has just been allergic to optics, right? Like, they just let the worst behavior go and they will always defend it at all costs. They will always double down, because historically that's what the movement has done. And it was actually smart in the past to do when there really were unfair, critiques being launched against the movement, back when there really was a big anti-LGBT problem. And it's kind of swinging back now, but the days of Matthew Shepard, and there wasn't really room for people to admit that the community had anything wrong with it, because they were fighting for their lives and they were fighting for their rights. Well, post rights, like post getting rights, the movement has really derailed. And that's clear to anyone with two brain cells to rub together, and that's another thing, gay marriage, that was the big fight, right? Like, that was the thing that when I was a kid, that was our like modern civil rights movement to an extent. Obviously that's kind of dramatic to compare the two, but you know what I'm saying. And everyone in my generation was on board with that. But what happens is there was an industry built on achieving those rights. There were groups like GLAAD and, the Trevor Project and all these groups that, do you think that's all just freelance work that all these activists were doing? No, they were raising billions of dollars. Make no mistake, it is a $1 billion industry to fight for LGBT rights. And that's why once you achieve them, you have to invent more to keep everyone's paycheck coming in. And the fact that people don't see that, is just wild to me. I'm like, wow, okay. So people think everyone's just doing this for free. Okay. But even that big right, gay marriage, that wasn't something that actually affected trans people, because if you changed your, legal sex and gender on your paperwork, which was something that was available in many states even before gay marriage was passed, trans people could always get married. And, there was never an issue with trans people using bathrooms until people made it an issue, until, it became this political football. Trans people were always using bathrooms. So for the most part, actually, beyond people just not having a great understanding of the tea, there weren't that many things lacking as far as their rights. In fact, I don't know. I've always been able to buy a house, buy a car, have a job. Like, what are these rights I'm missing? Please inform me. So if the LGB separates from the TQ, I'm not losing any sleep, because I don't consider myself part of any group anyways. I'm Blaire White. I'm one person. We is not my pronoun. And in fact, how about we just ban the whole thing entirely? Because the fact that people that consider themselves to be individuals like myself still receive, to some extent, like a collectivist blame for the bad behaviors coming out of any one of the letters. Because make no mistake, even though there's a lot of bad stuff happening from the TQ, all the drag queen story hours, I know that, a lot of YouTube channels, when they do videos about it, like to put, the word trans and then use a thumbnail picture of a drag queen, but 99% of those drag queens, you know, being inappropriate around kids are from the G. Those are gay men. Those are not trans people. So make no mistake, everyone's kind of making everyone look bad. So how about we all disband and learn to just be individuals and speaking for ourselves? And I think that would actually be the best thing for the community and the world. But let's see what people from both sides have to say about it, because I'm sure that will be interesting.
Never understood why the T was with the LGB. I never understood it. What does trans have to do with gay or lesbian? It has nothing to do with it.
I also will never understand why my sexuality is in the same category as an ideology that actively works against my own interests. I'm gay because I'm attracted to men. If we redefine what a man is, or we can't define what a man is, you're erasing my sexuality. Also, my sexuality is a fact that is based in reality. Changing your gender is not a fact based in reality. Now, you deserve respect. You can live your life however you want to live. I don't care. It personally doesn't affect me. But it does affect me when we're lumped into the same category as if it's all one when it's not. As we're seeing right now, the radical T's in the alphabet are targeting children and creating animosity towards the gay community as if we want this when it has nothing to do with us.
So I do agree that, you know, the T is targeting children in the sense that there's an entire medical industry that is preying on children. And I've spent my entire career speaking against that. You know, gender ideology is being taught in school, but let's also not get so ahead of ourselves, because need I remind you of the choir, the gay choir, exclusively from the G, that sang this?
We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them. We're coming for them. We're coming for your children. We're coming for them.
There's clearly an issue that everyone is kind of having with just managing to stamp out the groomers within the community, which at one time the community actually was good at. Do y'all remember NAMBLA? NAMBLA was the North American Man-Boy Love Association. It's disgusting to even say that out loud. And that was a group that once upon a time, decades ago, at the beginning of the LGBT rights movement, lashed itself onto the community. And with a swiftness, they were excommunicated. For whatever reason, people are having a bit of an issue kicking out the groomers now. But again, you know, that gay choir, we're coming for your children, that's the G. So let's not just place sole, you know, child preying on one letter in the acronym. It's kind of people from all over doing that. So let's watch someone on the other side of this argument.
Have you ever noticed that the whole LGB without the T group never tries to advocate for LGB rights? They just try to make sure that the T doesn't have any? I wonder why that is.
Maybe they're not advocating for LGB rights because they've already been won. And they're trying to preserve them at this point. I think that's the entire argument, right? The argument is we need more LGBT rights because what more do you want? What more you have? They have full legal equality everywhere in the country. So do the T's, by the way, because I don't count not being able to transition kids as a lack of a right. That's not a right. And that would be, if anything, a right for doctors and parents anyways, because kids can't consent to that regardless. So yeah, they're not trying to further rights for LGBT people. They already have them.
There is a huge difference between the LGBs and the TQ pluses. Because the TQ plus is all about gender ideology. The LGB is about sexuality. There is nothing in conflict with reality about being lesbian, gay, bisexual. It is an objective reality that sometimes people are attracted to other people of the same sex. The TQ plus is based around gender ideology, which is in direct conflict with objective reality.
I mean, that's wrong. Gender ideology actually came after the concept of being a transsexual. In fact, the concept of being transsexual, that word I believe was first spoken at like the beginning of the 19th century. And then gender ideology was something that was propagated under queer theory, like in the 80s and 90s. So that's not completely true, but that's whatever. But I agree that there is a huge difference between the two, and I don't see a reason why they should be together either.
Some people believe that our community should separate LGB from TQ, essentially dividing us along sexual orientation and gender identity. Simply put, we cannot do this because the source of our struggles is the same. To the people who prosecute us, we have all defied gender identities and betrayed their strict biological reality. Those with attraction either to the same gender or to multiple genders have shelved the traditional ideas of masculinity, femininity, and the family structure. And when transgender and non-binary individuals rewrite their identities, they are shelving those same ideas. The bigotry that LGB encounters wears the same face as the one that attacks the TQ. So because it will harm all of us the same, we protect all of us the same.
I mean, but again, when you have all your legal rights, the idea that we're all sticking together, like for what? For what? So when there's no unity on what the movement actually should be doing and what we should be fighting for, then it probably is time to disband. Am I wrong? What is there left to do? Nothing except embarrass ourselves. It's like, I understand that a lot of people that are, you know, talking about these issues now are people who, you know, were maybe born post 9/11, post, very, very young people. You get what I'm saying? And a lot of them don't really understand that throughout most of like the mid 2010s and towards, the late 2000s, like we had reached peak social acceptance for all these different types of people. There was no issue anymore, especially once gay marriage was passed. Like, we had kind of solved this problem, and now the problem is that it's going backwards, and it's because of this rampant collectivism. It's because we can't get on the same page and we're going all over the place, and the outside world sees that. The outside world sees that complete lack of logic in what we're actually fighting for, and like, it's just not good. So yeah, disband.
I want to make something very clear. The trans community and the gay community should be completely separate, because I'm gay and I don't want to put on a dress. I don't want to change my body parts. I've never had the desire to put on heels or a wig, perform in front of kids, perform in front of adults with cocktails at night. I'm not that person, okay? I'm just a gay guy.
I don't understand. Like, do people know that drag queens are gay men? Like, there are some trans people that are drag queens, but that's quite rare. Like, when you see these drag queen story hours and you see these drag performances happening with kids and, like, all those videos that make you want to vomit, it's almost always a gay man. So I really don't understand this whole separation of, like, we're separating from the T because we don't want to wear dresses and heels. A lot of y'all do. A lot of y'all do. So watching all these is really showing me that it's less about which letter is responsible, and it's about the fact that we have this inability to kick out the bad actors, the bad apples, the bad faith, the disgusting groomers within the community from each of the acronyms. Because I can point to horrific behavior from pretty much all of them except really the B's, right? And the L doesn't really do much wrong. What does the L do wrong? Like, what? I guess nothing. I mean, but you get the point. I don't think one letter is responsible. I think it's just all the disgusting shit that goes on in the name of rampant acceptance and rampant tolerance at all costs. Society is too tolerant. We got too tolerant. And so now what you're seeing is an overcorrection. And so maybe we're having some issues with real hate now and real anti-LGBT sentiment. But you know what? Maybe you should have been listening to the videos I've been making for the past near decade talking about how it's going to be bad when the pendulum starts swinging. How many times did I say that throughout the years? My primary message, all I would say is, can y'all please stop performing in front of kids, gay men? Can y'all please stop transitioning kids, freak trans people? Because once the rest of the world catches on to the fact that this is happening, and it's not just a niche topic appearing on Blaire White's YouTube channel, it's going to be an issue. And now it's an issue. Regardless of how you want to slice and dice the acronym, we just have to stop all that, right? But I also have to say just one thing that I feel like is pretty important, and that I feel like no one ever expresses this, which is mind-blowing to me. I don't care. Truly. I know there's this narrative that, like, I hold all my opinions and I do everything I do to, like, be accepted by, like, straight cis people, and then I'm just like a pick me and I want to be picked. I truly, to my core, and anyone who knows me knows this, There's not one bit of my soul that cares, who likes, dislikes, rejects, accepts, enjoys, hates the fact that I'm a transsexual. There is not one bit of me that cares who's okay with me or not, right? Because I've been given this one life, and as far as I know, I don't have a second go around. I'm living now for the foreseeable future. God willing, I live to 100 years old just to piss everyone off who wants me to croak now. Seeking external validation, which seems to be a huge part of the community these days. And, affirmation and, everyone wants to be affirmed. That is a fruitless endeavor that will lead you to a life of loneliness, emptiness, soullessness, because you will never, ever get everyone to like you, to affirm you, to enjoy you, to appreciate your presence. You have to go where you are appreciated or don't. I don't even really go where I'm appreciated. I stay in my house. But you get what I'm saying. It's like, it is a fruitless endeavor to seek external validation. You got to find that within yourself. And if you can't find it, you have to create it. That is the only way you're ever going to be happy. Not attaching yourself to some group, not joining some cult, not joining a group that you would be offended by me calling a cult, but we all really know is a cult, right? You have to be yourself. Embrace individualism, reject collectivism. Not to the extreme, obviously. We all have to see each other as fellow human beings and have basic respect for each other on that front. But understand that everyone is living a life completely different than you. You're living a life completely different than anyone else, especially if you fall within a sexual orientation or gender identity that is a minority. And I'm even speaking to these non-binary people and these genderqueer people and all these people that I don't understand and I don't accept. You shouldn't care if I accept you. You shouldn't care at all. You should be doing your own thing. How I feel about you shouldn't come into play one bit. But what do I know? Make sure you guys subscribe to this channel as well as my podcast channel. I upload on there weekly and the channel is growing really nicely. So I'm so happy you guys are enjoying it. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and I'll see you, of course, in the next video. Bye, guys.